The knock on my door wasn't polite. It was sharp, authoritative, the kind that tells you whoever's outside already thinks you're guilty. I opened it to find two police officers standing on my porch, and right behind them, arms folded like she owned the world, was her, Janet Holloway, HOA president, smug, perfect hair, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Sir," one of the officers said, "we received a complaint that you're refusing to comply with HOA regulations and trespassing on restricted property." I blinked once, calm. Then I leaned against my doorframe and said the one sentence that set everything on fire. "I'm not in their HOA." Janet actually laughed. Not nervous, not unsure, confident. "Oh, you are," she said. "And if you don't cooperate, we'll have you removed." That's when I smiled, because in my pocket was a document that was about to turn her entire world upside down. And she had no idea. She wasn't dealing with a homeowner. She was dealing with her new landlord. I didn't move into that house by accident. Every inch of that neighborhood had history, legal history, the kind most people ignore, until it cost them everything. The community was called Silver Creek Estates, a picture-perfect suburban development wrapped around a small private lake, with manicured lawns and an HOA that controlled everything from mailbox colors to how long your garage door could stay open. But what most residents didn't know, the land underneath half their common areas wasn't owned by the HOA. It never had been. Years ago, before the development was built, a large portion of that land belonged to a private ranch estate. When the developers carved it up, they made a critical mistake. They assumed certain parcels were transferred. They weren't. One of those parcels? A narrow but extremely important stretch of land running behind multiple properties, including the access road, drainage system, and part of the clubhouse utilities. And that parcel had just quietly changed hands. To me, I didn't rush in, didn't announce anything. I bought the property through a legal auction tied to an old estate dispute. Clean title, verified boundaries, surveyed twice. I knew exactly what I owned. And more importantly, I knew exactly what they didn't. For the first 2 weeks, I kept things quiet, observed, watched how the HOA operated. Janet made rounds like a patrol officer, writing citations, knocking on doors, issuing fines for things that barely mattered. Trash cans visible? Fine. Grass half an inch too tall? Fine. Guests parked overnight? Fine. It wasn't about order. It was about control. Then she found me. The first notice came taped to my front door. Violation, unauthorized exterior modifications, and failure to register with HOA. I smiled when I read it. They had no jurisdiction over me. Still, I ignored it. Second notice? Certified mail. Third notice? A fine. $500. That's when I walked into the HOA office for the first time. Janet didn't even look up at first. "Name and property address," she said like a machine. I gave it to her. She froze, looked up slowly, then leaned back in her chair. "Well," she said, lips curling slightly, "you're already in violation. That'll be $500, and you'll need to submit compliance forms immediately." I placed the notice back on her desk. "I'm not part of your HOA," I said calmly. She gave a short, dismissive laugh. "Everyone here is." "Not me?" Her smile tightened. "Sir, your house is within the boundary." "No," I interrupted gently. "Your map says that. Your records say that. But legally, I'm not." That's when her tone changed. Sharp, cold. "Pay the fine," she said, "or we escalate." I nodded once. "Go ahead," and walked out. I knew exactly what she'd do next. People like Janet always escalate. They rely on intimidation and the assumption that no one will challenge them. So I let her. I documented everything. Every notice. Every fine. Every incorrect claim of authority. I contacted property attorney and had my documents reviewed again. Title deed, land survey, easements, utility rights. Everything was airtight. Then I pulled something else. The original development filings. Buried in old county records was the truth. The HOA had been operating on assumed boundaries, not legally confirmed ones, which meant every fine issued on my property, invalid. Every claim of authority, unenforceable. And the most important part? The infrastructure they depended on crossed my land. Water drainage, access paths, electrical routing, all sitting on property they didn't own. I didn't act yet. I waited because I knew Janet wouldn't stop, and I needed her to go too far. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I was working from home when I heard raised voices outside. Janet again. This time, she wasn't alone. 2 HOA board members stood behind her, and they were placing a notice on my fence. Final compliance warning. Property subject to enforcement action. I stepped outside. Can I help you? I asked. She turned, already irritated. You've ignored multiple notices. We're now taking action. On what authority? I asked. She stepped closer. HOA authority. I shook my head slightly. You don't have authority here. That's when she snapped. Call the police, she said to one of the board members. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just stood there, waiting. 15 minutes later, the patrol car pulled up, which brings us back to that moment. The officers on my porch, Janet behind them, confident, certain, and completely wrong. Sir, the officer repeated, we need to resolve the situation. I nodded. Of course. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. Before we go any further, I said, you might want to look at this. The officer took it, unfolded it. His expression changed immediately, brows furrowing. He looked at his partner, then back at me. This is a deed, he asked. Correct. He read more carefully. Property boundaries, surveyed, county recorded. Then he looked over his shoulder at Janet. Ma'am, this property isn't listed under your HOA jurisdiction. Silence. Janet stepped forward quickly. That's not possible, she snapped. Our records. Your records are wrong, I said calmly. She turned to me, eyes sharp. You're lying. I shook my head. No, but you've been enforcing rules on land you don't own. That's when I handed over the second document. The survey map. Highlighted. Clear. Undeniable. The officer studied it, then exhaled slowly. Ma'am, he said to Janet, this appears to be private property outside HOA control. Her confidence cracked for the first time, just slightly. But I saw it. This doesn't change anything, Janet said, though her voice wasn't steady now. He's still interfering with community operations. I tilted my head slightly. Am I? Then I pulled out one last document, the one that mattered most. I think you want to see this. She snatched it this time. Read it, then read it again. Her face drained of color, because what she was holding was the deed to the land behind multiple HOA-controlled areas, the land their infrastructure relied on, the land I owned. You, she whispered. Yes, I said calmly. That access road your maintenance crew uses? My property. She shook her head slowly. No, the drainage system you redirected last year? I continued. Also mine. Her lips parted. And utility easements? I added softly. Conditional, not permanent. The officer looked between us. Wait, are you saying? I'm saying, I interrupted, eyes still on Janet, that the HOA has been operating on my land without permission. Silence dropped like a weight. Janet stepped back. For the first time since I met her, she looked unsure. Within a week, everything changed. Lawyers got involved. Not just mine. The HOAs too. Because once the truth came out, it spread fast. Emergency board meetings. Panicked emails. Residents asking questions. How much land does he own? Can he shut things down? Are we liable? The answer? Yes. Very. My attorney filed a formal notice. Unauthorized use of private property. Improper enforcement actions. Potential financial damages. And a simple requirement moving forward. If the HOA want to continue using my land, they'd need a legal agreement. At my terms. Janet tried to fight it. Of course she did. But this wasn't about authority anymore. This was about law. And she had none. 3 weeks later, I walked into the same HOA office. Same desk. Same chair. But everything felt different. Janet wasn't sitting behind the desk anymore. She was standing, waiting, her expression controlled but tight. The board members sat quietly nearby, their lawyer present, my lawyer beside me. I placed a document on the table. Here are the terms, I said. Access agreements, usage fees, strict limitations, and one very specific clause. All previous fines issued against me, void, and formally withdrawn. Janet stared at the paper, then at me. You planned this, she said quietly. I met her gaze. No, I said. You forced it. She looked down again. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then finally, she signed. A month later, the neighborhood was quieter. No more aggressive notices. No more random fines. The HOA still existed, but it behaved. Because now, they knew something they hadn't before. Power isn't about loud voices or threats. It's about knowing exactly where you stand and letting the truth do the rest. As for Janet, she avoids my street now, doesn't knock anymore, doesn't send letters. And every time she drives past that stretch of land behind the homes, she remembers the day she called the cops on the wrong person and accidentally turned her authority into my leverage